when we first moved to Egham, we just wanted to know what was going on in the town. We saw the museum, it's free, it was open 3 times a week. We just came in to see what we could find out about the history of Egham, which I think is incredibly important to the community. I think a museum gives us a sort of sense of belonging. The information that it has gives us a sense of where our community comes from, and therefore it sort of gives us a sense of place. What surprised me about the museum, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised about it, but anyway, what it pleased me greatly was the professionalism of the people that are in the museum. Some of them are paid, but many of them volunteers, and you can come in with a question and they will treat it seriously. You can fill in a form, you can explain what you want to know, and they'll take it away, look into it, and get back to you with a decent answer. It's brilliant. One thing that I was involved in at the museum, which was great, really lovely, was the Suffrage in Egham project, which took place a couple of years ago. They had a lot of activity throughout the year, looking back on 100 years of women voting, and they finished this with a performance with music and with drama, and I attended that. I was the choir that I'm in, which is Egham Choral, performed at that performance, and we sang the March of the Women. It was just great, yeah, I've got my little badge that I got at the time, Suffrage in Egham 2018, So as well as this choir that I sang in, I also, there was some drama, and we learnt about what was happening in Egham to do with suffrage. And I think that's really important for a museum, because it's telling us what our community did, and how, why we're important too. In something which is a national event, it brings it to the local level, which is great. There was a story that they told us about a woman who was called Isabel Coe, who was on a march from Edinburgh to London, and who went through Egham, and the little story that they told us was that she'd been stopped by the police for cycling on the pavement, and a little bit of research obviously had gone into this, and the children had made a video about it, and that's on the website. Do look out for it. It's called I think it's called Suffrage Moves or Egham Moves, and it's delightful, and it just brings it down to the local level, which is what this museum does. There's huge events happening, there's Magna Carta, which is such a big event, there's the war which happened. You can find out, what Egham's involvement was in this, not just as a national event, but as how it affected people here, our community in the past. So I learnt about what had happened in Egham with regard to women's suffrage. A couple of days after that, I went to London, and there was a march, and I went with my daughter, celebrating 100 years of women having the vote. And I heard the same song played, and it just sort of links it up. It links your small town with what was happening throughout the country. So that was a great experience. I think it just teaches me that what happens locally is important. I'm a local councillor, and some of the things that we deal with, you know, are rather small, but they're part of a bigger picture, which is, you know, what's happening in the nation. I think that we'll find, you know, not me, but, you know, 50 years down the line, people will be saying, so what happened during the COVID-19 epidemic? What happened in my town? And they'll come to the museum and I'm sure there'll be an exhibit saying, well, you read of it as if it was a national event, but actually this is something that happened, that affected the Egham community as much as anyone else. And it will bring history to life for people, which is so important. Since I was elected a councillor, I became involved in the At the Lit project, which is a project to make the Literary Institute, the building, into a cultural community hub for Egham and the surrounding area. And over the last 18 months, I've been involved in one of my big involvements has been trying to chivvy councillors into getting involved. You know, they've been interested in the idea, and every now and then I've been saying, you know, okay, so let's get on with it, let's do it. Recently, in a couple of months ago in September, the council agreed in principle that we could have this cultural community hub in the Literary Institute, and that's called At the Lit, and the At the Lit sort of sits very comfortably with the Egham Museum. Maybe they'll be part of the same organisation, maybe they'll be separate, but they have very similar sort of outlooks, and people hopefully will come into At the Lit and they will, you know, see that the museum is here too, and so it will raise the profile of the museum among Egham residents. The Literary Institute has off and on been very much a community building over the centuries, and At the Lit is wanting to sort of continue that tradition. Egham has been suffering. I mean, even before COVID, there were shops closing down, and I'd like to think that post-COVID, At the Lit will contribute to the increase in vibrancy in the town, which will also happen on account of the new development, but it will make, it will increase footfall, give people from the surrounding area a place to come to, a sort of inclusive place where they can feel comfortable, where they're not expected to spend a lot of money, but give them things to be interested in, and contribute very much to the health of our town. That I used the museum very recently, the beginning, I think it was the end of last year, there was a consultation, public consultation on the naming of the buildings in the new development, and Runnymede Borough Council, consulted with the Egham Museum, with the Historical Society, with the Egham Residents Association, with councillors, just to find some names for the buildings, and it was really nice that they recognised the fact that, if possible, the names should come from within the community, and some of the names that were suggested were to do with the Magna Carta history of the area. And although that is very much the history of Runnymede and very much the history of Egham and the edge of Egham, Nevertheless, I thought, and others thought, that it would be really nice to have some names that reflected something more recent and maybe something not so well known in our history. And so I propose, with my husband, I propose some names which are to do with businesses that functioned in Egham in the past. And I came to the museum really for help in finding that out. I used the Egham picture book, which has a lot of information about businesses in Egham in the past, and we came up with 4 names. We came up with the Gem as the name, which is these names have now been accepted by Runnymede. The Gem is the name of the first cinema that was in Egham, and as one of the buildings is going to house a cinema, that's going to be the name of that building. Then there's Cornmarket House. There was a corn merchant in Egham, and on the site of where the Budgeons was. And that corn merchant house, that building is going to be called Corn Merchant's House, named after that event that happened, you know, in Egham over the last sort of 100 or so years. And generally, yes, so I used the museum to get the information about Egham's past, just to inform those names.